Spoiler alert. Key scenes and developments in the movie are discussed in depth here, so do not watch if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want those surprises to be spoiled. Okay, we're live here on Pi Day. That's 3/14, and now we just got done watching the movie Pi, and me and a couple friends here, we're gonna have a little film review and just discussion about all things Pi.
What's going on,
Jimmy
folks?
TheBlitz here.
How's it going? Glad to be here.
David Romo, RomKon.
Artist actor.
InstaKhanista.
Hello.
Tina Laura's over there. She's gonna hang out on the couch. Tina Laura Fink.
She's gonna be running the social medias for us today, so use the hashtag Vincent Fink Pie.
And I'm very pleased to bring with us as well Carlos here. Carlos the Younger, or, what do you go by these days?
Peraza.
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 Okay. What he said. Okay. Carlos is going to talk to us about some very interesting topics as well. So we're just going to start real quick though with I don't know if anybody out there has seen the movie, but it's really interesting. It's a early film by what was the director?
Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah, and he did Requiem for a Dream and a couple others.
The Fountain.
Mother. Have you seen any of those?
No. Well, Requiem for a Dream I have seen. This movie came out in like 1998,
Yeah.
I believe. But it's in black and white, which is kind of like it takes you away from it. It's like it's a black and white film back in 1998.
So yeah, we're just gonna.
Oh,
what
I
do you
didn't. I
let's
saw
go ahead.
Requiem for a Dream and what was the other one? Y'all said the
Mother.
Fountain.
He's done
The
several
Fountain.
others, but that was the one that I know of.
That makes sense. Why it's like kind of a mind like being in your head kind of movie.
Yeah.
So about Pi though, let's get a general consensus of like how we all feel. I love the movie personally. Obviously, that's why I'm always forcing people to watch this every March 14th because I think it's it's the only movie called Pi. It's the only movie that even is really about Pi. There's Life of Pi and a bunch of other silly movies like American Pie that have nothing to do with the actual number Pi.
Makes fun of human nature in mainstream media.
So I hope y'all are enjoying some pie out there too as well. You know, we had some pizza pie. Now I'm gonna have a little bit of this peach pie. So I think the movie's really cool. It's very artsy. You know, it's one of those. I love those kind of films. You know, the ones that are just really different, very artistic, not your traditional kind of movie, and somewhat low budget too. Those are some of my favorite movies. Another one or two like that would be like Waking Life. But this one is kind of like that too. It's very surreal, and I think it messes with your mind when you're watching it. You're kind of trying to interpret and figure out what it's really trying to say. So to me, there's really not many low points or bad qualities about the movie. I really can't think about anything that I don't like about the movie. So I'm gushing. I love it. What do you guys think here?
It's my first time watching the movie myself, and blown away by the cinematography. I really like the artistic style. You got this madman who's just going over himself with numbers. He lives in an apartment. He has these like big computers, or these old computers, like a Macintosh, or like an old Windows.
Yeah, like using the floppy
Windows
disk.
DOS.
Like a Windows DOS system with a big ass floppy disk. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's pretty cool. I don't think I would see it outside if I was just flipping through HBO or anything like that. I don't know if I would be choosing to see it. So I'm glad I was in this atmosphere to see it and view it here in the big ass screen that we got back here in Vincent Fink studio on the Winter Streets. Romo?
Okay, this is my analytical take. I'm going to give you my mathematical perspective, scientific perspective, and then obviously the English perspective.
And we need the star rating.
Yes,
Just
star
star
rating.
rating's important.
But I will not give the star rating until everyone gives their input. Okay, fast forward now to the point. Okay, Pi as we know it is more of a symbolical and allegorical film that uses a lot of strong graphic and controversial references that gets a lot of attention to the viewer. Now, some people may be confused about it, but if you really think about it, Pi has been used, to solve math, to solve miseries, and yes, it has been used as an algorithm for the language in different cultures to determine either the future, past tense or present, or to calculate within the numbers as a whole system. Now, that being said, let's now go to the English narrative of this. Keep in mind, this is fictional, but it uses a lot of algorithmic, trigonometric calculus and mathematical perspectives that dives well into the play. But the main character is trying so hard to exert his body despite that he hates his weak self based on his chronic migraine that he takes DMTs. The insanity goes that he must solve it, so his obsession of this number, of this algorithm, gets so consumed, he increases the dose of DMT, which takes his insanity, ignoring his mentor's advice to chill out. Now, as it goes further, with all great geniuses of the minds, they literally go, to the point that they can't even solve the most simplest answer because the math numbers are going greater. There are so many algorithms, there's so many, political references in there too that ties not only with the ancient, cultures, but also with the modern culture, such as, our American culture, so to speak. We could take it all as far as back as to the Hebrew culture, but I let you people to decide. I would personally say this is a good open conversation for people to debate what are the views that are more expressed on, because it gives a vague area that makes it so popular.
Great. That was very in-depth. All right, let's turn it over to whoever's next, whoever wants to speak.
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that, but I will. I just saw like somebody that had, he was like a insane genius, kind of like A Beautiful Mind. Also, it kind of reminded me of, was it 23 with
Jim Carrey?
Yeah, with Jim Carrey. Because it's like numbers are communicating to him, and he's trying to figure it out, and he's popping all these drugs that I guess are helping him or keeping him awake or something, and he just gets a little crazy with it and starts, like destroying his physical self. Well, I mean, it was kind of scary to me.
Yeah.
Like, because I like to get into, like, I myself in the numerology and numbers and trying to figure out cycles and how everything connects. But like, to get to the point he got to, I would not want to be that into it. Like, I want to take a break and go have a beer and eat some pie like I'm doing now. Right. But I do understand how he got. I think the drugs I think him taking the drugs that he did to try to help him calm down was making things worse. I don't know, like analytical or whatever. Yeah. I don't know what kind of drugs he was taking. It's almost kind of like the opposite of limitless. Right. Like, we're limitless. You get all the information and you're like, cool. But he just couldn't handle it. It was like too much information and it was driving him mad. Gotcha. Kind of like Tesla.
Right.
Didn't that happen to Tesla?
Yeah, I'd say so. He definitely wound up kind of bonkers. You're right. Actually, the ending of the movie, now that you mention it, is very kind of reminiscent of Tesla's end. He was he was basically just like, what we got going on over there?
Sorry, technical difficulties.
He was kind of like park bench ridden by the end of his life too, right?
And he was kind of a little bit crazy with numbers too. Like,
yeah, definitely. I was thinking of that too when we were watching it. The 369 thing. Like I was like, I'm wondering if there's got to be a pattern.
But he was saying that life was vibration and numbers and
right.
everything.
Okay, well we're gonna get more into that in a moment. Let's get Carlos's take on it then, and then we'll kind of get into a little bit more of the open discussion.
The movie starts with what I thought was a very interesting annotation to what discovery is, and is that he was affected by the light. So there's always this talk about there's a darkness and there's a light. There's a place when you do not know and a place where everything is revealed. So his problems, his psychological issues, the doors that were open to him were because of staring at the light. You can take it both ways. You can take it as a physical man looking at a physical object, or you can take it on the esoterical side and saying a door was open, a connection was made, and that's the vortex to where the movie begins. Then the movie is trying to explain to us what a mind goes through when he is acknowledging, entering in the flow and the ebb of understanding, and how everything starts to synchronize with his existence. It's almost like there's people who believe there are coincidences and there are no coincidences.
Right.
It seems that everything is an interrelated mirage and bombardment on coincidences that we can't even comprehend.
Or able to explain, like
Pi-
you're saying, it has a systematic or subtext, inner line between the numbers of the words. But go on.
Pi may be, the circle may be something for us not to comprehend fully. We can draw it, we can understand it and use our body to represent it. But do we really know the amount of integers to the number? Do we really understand if there's any patterns in it? That loses you in the search, but at the same time gives you the clarity. You were mentioning that maybe something that it could be something negative, something obscure, something occult, but in reality, the practice and the contemplation of Pi is something that we should celebrate. So that's why in the movie, I feel that there's a lot of intention to make it difficult to digest when it should be invited to conversations like these. It should not be dark. It should be celebrated. It should be contemplated every day, because every time that we think about it, we are given new tools. We are looking at new places.
Well, maybe he went insane because he was the only one downloading all that information, and he didn't have anybody to share it with.
Yeah.
Except for that little Asian girl with the calculator.
Yeah. Well, the people who did want him to share it with them were for their own malevolent,
Yeah.
or at least their own selfish, it seems, causes, right?
Manipulating. But they could
Yeah.
share the knowledge or the understanding with it, they just wanted it.
They're kind of using him in
Yeah.
a way. Yeah, people were trying to use him to get that sacred knowledge that they've been seeking. So for the Hasidic Jews, they were they were trying to pry it out of him so they could get in touch with God, right?
Or they can do it for their own purpose to, free themselves instead of giving it back to the people. Sadly, that's what people in, patriotical situations they would do. Now, let's go back to the man who was, in terms of trust. The guy was going through such, antitrust issues. At first you think, this guy is a jerk. I mean, he just goes, minds his own business. He is obsessed with his mathematical career. But later, when the story develops in the narrative, you get to see that his paranoia is interpreted with people that are backstabbing him. And that's what creates his insanity, which it goes out public. But in the beginning of the movie, he is so, anti-trusting because there's just so much worries and things in his head. Now, that being said, when he starts going in and trying to look for the numbers, he is so fixated. Again, I want to say it's his obsession, which is both his strength and his downfall.
Right.
His obsession to solve does make through breakthroughs, which he doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut, which creates a lot more enemies than he realizes that appear to be friendly. So when that happens, then he learns so much to the point that he can't even be able to explain. It's overwhelming. Right. And this is where the crooked rabbi, spoiler alert, says, you can't handle it because you are not ready. I am ready. Like, I am the one.
You can't handle the truth.
Boom.
No truth. Handle are you.
Bleep. And then he's like, you're not the one that can do it. I'm the one that can handle it.
He says that one has to be pure, and he believes that only the highest rabbi is pure enough to take this down.
Exactly.
And
But
then he says, like, up yours, Rabbi, he gave it to me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have
the protagonist is looking at it as a rational perspective, even though he's insane, which is ironic. But the rabbi is looking at it as a conservative, nurturing perspective, even though at that moment in the interrogation, he's not who he is. He is not nurturing or even a godly leader at all. He is completely demonic.
Yeah, he seems that way, right? We definitely get the impression that, he's, again, trying to use the guy, and who knows what this rabbi and, his cult, like what his cult is capable of and what they're going to actually do with the power. If they were to know the name of God, right, that's what it was. It was a 216 character word of God, the name of God, right? And if they knew that they would be able to, I guess, connect more in a more spiritual, higher
Yes.
And that is another big point of the movie and the creators. They want to show us that all these numbers are not only in religion and not only in science and not only in philosophy, but they are pretty much what we're, and in business, pretty much what we're understanding, and they repeated it more than once in the movie, is that they are everywhere.
Yes.
It is a language. It is a way that us as humans get the privilege to understand what it is, what we're seeing, and how we're interacting with it. But math is not reality. What I mean by this is that math cannot create. We can use math to understand what it is that we're seeing, but the math does not have weight, does not have arms, cannot think. We can just use it as a vehicle to understand creation.
That's a very good point.
So when the rabbi is fixated on what the letters in his writing are teaching him, he is leaving by his own ego things away and separated from him that are not allowing him to understand the humbleness of the reality of what it is to accept 216 numbers, 72 numbers, 56 numbers.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, he makes that point to the protagonist in the film. So this is probably a good moment. Are we kind of going to just go into the, like, does anybody want to make their statements, or are we kind of already there?
Go ahead.
I did prepare because you told me to write some notes down, so I did prepare something. Okay. So whenever we're ready to do like a 5-minute or
I think we can go into that right now, because I think we're in a good place. We're getting really into the pith of the matter of what pi is. By the way, out there, we're discussing what pi is all about. You know, today is Pi Day. It's not just any other day. This is the 3.14 day of the year, and we like to celebrate that by watching the movie Pi, and then now we're going to have a little discussion about it, what we've been discussing, and now we're going to have to talk to Carlos, and he's going to give us some interesting insights, I think. It's always fun. So
I think that we all have them. I just came a little bit more prepared, so that's why I'm so excited and nervous and all these good things, right?
I would love to hear your input.
we don't do this kind of stuff often. We should do it more, but yeah, it's going to be fun. So let's go ahead and just talk. We're going to hear from him, and then I have some ideas I want to talk about, and I think Jimmy probably has some insights, and I know David always does. So we'll get into it. All right, go ahead, Carlos.
Well, so first I wanted to thank you, Vincent. For getting this together, for creating this effort, because I think that if there's anything important in life, is to be able to resonate with frequencies that are similar to yours.
I agree, yeah.
If not, there is no way of making a future. There's no way of coming together and changing ideas and evolving, transcending, becoming more.
Right.
It seems that there is a push for not wanting us to do this.
I agree.
So thank you for putting it together, for putting me in the effort of writing a couple of notes and just coming here and joining you guys and being able to communicate my ideas.
Awesome, man. Great. Yeah, I love it. So happy you came.
So two things about pi. I was thinking about, two small references that we all use about pi. So 3.141592. So 4 plus 5 is 9 and 1 plus 1 is 2. So in those, even in those first numbers, there's little interplays of addition and subtraction and exponentiation.
Yeah.
There's 88 keys to a piano, and we have 14 phalanges on each hand. That means that there's 28 phalanges on both of our hands. If we divide 88 by 28, it's 3.14. So even in music and the way that we interpret and create music by an instrument like the piano, we are creating pi. We are playing with it.
Wow.
Or, pi could be a formula for the building block of matter.
Yes. Yes.
Continue.
Definitely.
There's one of the holy books, the Bible, the one that we use on this side of the Western world. In the beginning, 3 words with 14 characters. In the first 3 letters of a sacred book, pi is being introduced. It was in the beginning, heaven and earth were created. The circle, the sphere, the square. We're talking about time, we're talking about space, we're talking about material. In the first verse of a sacred book, all these mathematical concepts are being created, are being shown to us that they exist. But let's not go deep into the religious aspect of it or the aspect of how religions or institutions interpret these numbers, because we could be in there for hours and hours, and we haven't even scratched it, right?
Right.
It is very important for us as humans to understand that the contemplation of pi is a scientific endeavor.
Yes.
And what I mean by this is that we all get the opportunity to be a scientist. Science is not for academia and pillars of knowledge that have been peer-reviewed and re-established by a echo chamber of patting themselves in the back. We all have the power to exercise scientific endeavor. And by what I mean by that is, what is science? Science is it means to know. It comes from a word in Latin that is scientia. It means that I pursue the knowledge. And the way that I want to pursue this knowledge, the way that I want to find it, is that I want to exercise the scientific method. What do I mean by this? That we as humans have established rules that we have to follow in order to check ourselves.
Right.
You follow these steps, I can replicate those steps and get the same answers of truth that I discovered, and I can pass along to the next. If you cannot experiment with your reality, it's not science. It's very important, and that's something that I wanted to see if we can come together in acknowledging terms like that, so that we can get the most of this conversation. So the scientific method has some steps. We need to watch, observe a natural phenomenon. With watching it, we then question ourselves. We create a question to try to explain what it is that we saw. To answer that question, we need to create some variables. We need to identify the variables that are going to be controlled in your experiment. Right. So you have an independent variable, which is the cause of your assumption. You have your dependent variable, that is the effect. So a scientific endeavor is a correlation between causality and effect. It is us using the method to find an answer.
Right.
When you say causality, you mean causation. I'm just trying to clarify.
Of course.
Okay, continue.
It's something has to be in order for that other thing to happen.
Brilliant.
And sometimes we can meet a false positive in some ways too, right? I mean, like that is
the null hypothesis.
Right. You know, like sometimes it's like you can think that you know, every time it's raining, I see a red car drive by. You know, that doesn't mean that cars drive by and cause the rain or whatever. You know, just as a random example, there's definitely several things that you could think, and you have to, like you said, be able to test that and reproduce that.
Yes.
So you can't just have something that seems corollary and be like, it's the whole like correlation does not equal causation thing, right?
Yes, correlation does not equal causation. Yes. So if we can understand that, if we can all come together in these concepts, that we are able to navigate our experience and we are able to all be scientists, it means that there is a power inside of us that we all possess, and that we all resonate on that frequency, and that it's a pleasure to be able to share frequencies with other people. We are our heart, and the heart is that pulsation, is your frequency, is the way that you move about in this material realm that we call Earth.
It's really good.
I know that music kind of.
It's pretty in depth that you use causation, you know, to put in with the scientific explanations. And to go ahead and say to our guests, a simplified term on using the scientific method, as Carlos has described, is first you start with a problem, then you do the research. Obviously, we elaborated on the research. Then we come up with a hypothesis, which is, coming up with a theory to be tested, whether if it's true or not. Then there is experimentation, which obviously you get all the variables to test it out to see if this theory that we come up with our heads is true or not. Then we test it to get the hard scientific evidence and then the conclusion of what was that we are facing that is real. So, anyway, back to you two guys. Please carry on.
You had more there?
I wanted to go into two more points that we're going to round up what Pi invites to me and the purpose that is life, because we should all find a purpose in life. Whatever it is, Pi is going to be the result of it. It does not mean that it circles, but it's an answer that we cannot grasp, but that is pushing us forward into whatever it is that we are meant to do. There are claimed sciences at this time that are missing to give us valid hypotheses and experiment. They are jumping to conclusions from foundations that are not fully supportable by an observable phenomena. And I find problems with arts like archaeology, geology, paleontology, astronomy, theoretical physics. All these fields, all these so-known sciences assume beginnings that are not experimentable, or they are not falsifiable. So they are built upon foundations that at this moment in time we're starting to see as faulty. There's thing in this mainstream capital science, capital letter science, that is garbing itself and really being exposed as pseudosciences. And we need to be very careful in pursuing our knowledge and asking the questions of what the foundations of our beliefs are and testing them, because we have the power. We are scientists. So who was the scientist? What did he say? And what were the experiments done in order to do those things? Those things will answer a lot of questions for each one of us personally at our own level of understanding.
So it would take a long time for us to knock out our bias, per se, if we were to go ahead and debunk all these premeditated theories that we grew up with, like you said, archaeology, theoretical physics and so forth. And yes, I do agree it does take some time and level of understanding because it's like a form of discipline. But I must ask either this group or people watching, are there ways to retest these variables so we get closer to the truth? After all, in our study of science, it is trying to prove what we do know that is already wrong to get closer to the truth.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of us are trying to do, and it's definitely keeping an open mind, but not so much an open mind that your brain falls out, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's
or
not
you're drugged by the DMT and then you're ready to go bananas.
right. No. Was there any more there or no?
I think I missed a little bit of the heart issue, not the heart issue, but the heart fact of experience. And it is that we are all hearts, but we all need to share a reality with other hearts.
Yes.
We are bound to our shared reality, but still, everything in your life should point to you to be centered, to find your own speed, to not be swayed by things that are beautiful or shiny. The more that we contemplate Pi, the more that we contemplate an experience, it's an interiorization. It's taking us inside. Right. The spiral goes deep inside of us. But it needs to be shared. So we are part of a community. We are part of a town, of a city. but this city is also being affected by another layer that is coming even farther away from the reaches that we can actually experiment and touch. It's almost like we are bound to what we can see with our eyes. Right now, we cannot affect anything anywhere, anyhow in the world. It's just us.
It's as if we're radiating both inside within ourselves and outward outside ourselves. So
Yes.
we're the center point of it. So like I say, you're spiraling towards ourselves, making ourselves centered, ourselves whole and complete. But we're also our effects, whatever we do in the world is also radiating itself out too. So it's kind of like we're spiraling out of control infinitely,
Yes.
and we're spiraling within ourselves infinitely as well until we find.
Some contain, some balance.
Until at one point we might find each other on the other side.
And that's why I think in the movie, that end, that drastic and dramatic end, may have been an explanation of, okay, I found this place, I understand pain, I understand causation and effect, I know the name of the creator, all those things come together, I can take my life. I mean, none of us want to take our lives here. And I don't think that is the purpose either.
Well, and he didn't
but
actually
for
die.
him and his
Yeah, I mean
reality,
technically he didn't really die. He gave himself a lobotomy with the drill. He took with a drill.
He became screw loose.
By the way, if you guys haven't seen the movie, it's worth a scene to watch. As he's like in panic, he hears the screeching, the numbers are spinning in his head. He takes the drill and he's like, all right, fuck it.
Yeah.
Bah.
Right. Yeah. Definitely massive spoil alerts going on here, but also I want to point out something that one of your guests here mentioned that I never thought about was that he mentioned that how it was interesting how he chose to use the drill because the drill is actually an activated spiral, you know. And I didn't think about that. And I was like, yeah, I guess it could have been a lot. He could have done it several other ways, but the choice of the drill may have not have been just a coincidence on
sure
the
not.
work of the director.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure Aronofsky does not leave the drop of a pen without being intentionally put there.
Yeah.
I may have to say something about the drill. I mean, the drill was an abstract way to say that it was like, in a way, a mathematical golden circle. I'm speaking in allegory based on literary point of view. He used the drill to kind of pull himself off from the circle. In the backstory, a little bit of spoilers now, he was suffering through a migraine head condition that was a rare disease that he needed to take a controlled portion of the drugs that he was taking with his EpiPen. And the minute when he got out to the sun, you know, because it would make things worse for his mental condition through the skin, us as human beings, it's ironic through this fictional base that we use the sun to help enlighten ourselves, to get our vitamin D, to be happy.
Right.
But then that's his kryptonite.
Yeah.
He chose to use it because he wanted to, as a scientist, see it as, you know, to discover, to embrace reality, to study reality. But the more he did it, it caused him more challenges for him to, you know, face other variables whatsoever. So by the time when he did the screw thing, it was just like, well, you know what? I'm either going to live or die, but I'm going to kill this cancer of a pain that was also my strength. And then by the time he was able to live simply, it was just like, well, okay, I've got nothing to worry about with this tumor that's also my intelligence. So my curse or my burden is uplifted.
Yeah. It definitely gives you this idea of like, you know, his brilliance is also his curse or something, right?
Yes.
You know, it's like a common thing, I guess, that that you find in, or maybe not so common. I mean, usually in movies, you know, the hero has a struggle and then he kind of comes out of it on the other side a better person, and maybe we did kind of see that, but at the same time, it was kind of like it was kind of a tragedy too, you know, because it's like he has to like sacrifice. It seems like he can't do math really anymore in the end. You know, the little girl asks him a number, and you know, you're not quite certain because he kind of smirks and thinks, and then says, "I don't know." When she asks him to, you know, to spit out some numbers.
Do you think he remembers that he used to know, or do you think that he just sees that question as something that he will never achieve, so he smirks it off? And
Right. I kind of feel like the latter. It seemed to me like he just found it humorous, like, and maybe even a bit pleasing that like he couldn't figure it out anymore because he knew that part of him was gone, and that's hard for me. That's hard to see that, you know, because just imagining something like, you know, you having to like lose your talent, you know, or lose whatever it is that makes you unique and just a virtuoso of some sort. That you have to like let go of that or remove that, or else it'll kill you in the end, right? That's
like
scary
what
thought.
said.
And I feel like it's a little too real maybe for me because especially being an artist and then knowing about so many artists who have like either taken their life or just kind of drugged themselves into a bottomless pit, and they spiral, if you will, right?
Of course.
They spiral down.
Just like the mathematical golden circle that we all see.
Right.
The spiral of the drill, it pulls yourself out of the circle, it could push you into the deep hole whatsoever.
Right.
And the thing about, also another thing too that I kind of noticed with this guy, the amount of medication that he did.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yes, it was so comic book cartoony. Right. The way he's able to punish himself to numb the pain.
But you notice as it was going.
The more DMT he was taking, it was literally giving him an adrenaline rush to tolerate excessive pain.
And the more the movie goes, you see the more pills
he's taking just to numb the pain. When really all he had to do was let it go. Like, it's a psychological thing of releasing the suffering. I'm not trying to encourage Taoism or Buddhism here, but part of it is, and I'm also going to introduce the Christian and the Judaic teachings as well. Like, sometimes you have to let things go and give it to the universe or God or whatever you call it. And that's what he did, but in such a graphic way. Drill up!
The best form of self-medication is by just doing it yourself. You don't need drugs. You don't need these
Exactly.
substitutions. You yourself are able to, within yourself, find the cure.
Exactly.
In his case, a drill. In other cases,
Sometimes that means just drilling.
sometimes I need to slap myself. That's
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Just look myself up like,
Some people cut, some people drill themselves in the head.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's cryptic. It's cryptic now that, coming from the third person watching this, we're all laughing about this creepy ending concept. But, this is the type of film where you have to step back and think about the situation. This isn't something to enjoy and get so drawn to this graphic narrative that you're afraid to comprehend. Much like the protagonist.
Also, it's a good movie to just be nice to your teachers.
Yeah, of course.
If they're going through those numbers just on a daily basis,
There is a saying.
be nice to them.
There is a saying that Einstein says is that don't worry about your math problems. I can assure you, my math problems are much greater than yours.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought up a little Einstein there. I mean, just in lieu of the day, this is actually Einstein's birthday, and so I also had to kick on my Einstein socks here.
Hey.
Why
Wait,
not?
Einstein's birthday is on 3/14?
It is.
No.
Sweet!
No.
That's what they say.
Okay, we're gonna talk about some of my issues with Dr. Einstein, but
Oh boy.
Yeah, and I think it's
That-
I think it's the day Carl Sagan died. Also.
but
And now the next podcast?
those coincidences like that are those
Synchronicities.
that are coming from outside culture that are just string theorizing us. So what I mean by this is that mathematicians have found answers in math.
Yes.
There are things there, but they are so focused on the math, like in the movie, that they are leaving intricacies that are about spiritualism and consciousness and community and religious studies and letters and the numbers behind the letters.
Kind of like astrology, where people are trying to draw points and stars.
All
Yes.
of those things
Yes.
are
you
part
don't
of.
include those ingredients.
So
Your
string.
calculations are off.
Yes. So string theory tells us that there are multiple universes and that
Yes.
they overlap and they come into our reality and they leave marks of something that we interpret them as ways that I think, like Einstein's birthday, for him to be born on that day, for George Michael to pass away on last Christmas. He wrote Last Christmas song. Things like that are everywhere.
Oh, Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking. Which he based it on
are to me
Einstein.
reminders that this reality that we cannot touch has a much more fluid, ungraspable, subjective reality. It's what you make it be. It's what you find.
Is it almost like reality has kind of a sick sense of humor, maybe too?
Yes,
Yes.
And that's the end of the movie. The end of the movie is him still alive, on some other reality where none of it there's no overlapping of those realities.
Right.
But we get to see him there.
Yeah.
And he is in balance.
I do like
in
that.
homeostasis.
That's an interesting interpretation of the film that I haven't considered. So I like that. Interesting, yeah, and I love string theory too. I'm a very big proponent of the theory. It resonates with me, no pun intended. But yeah, it's just it makes sense, right? If you really look into the vibrational quality that everything takes on, all matter. I don't see a more elegant theory, even though it's kind of clunky, and they're still trying to work out the kinks. It definitely has proven for quite a while, for a couple decades now, to be the best unified theory we got. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me, and yeah, I think there is definitely a possibility of some of like what you were mentioning there about the intersecting of other realities or.
But
universes.
still, it stays on the realm of mathematics.
Right.
It will never be provable.
Right, that's the problem.
That is a question that does not belong to us.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have experimental physicists to take these math theories
and then put these physics theories or these mathematical theories into the test to see which one will work within our reality or possibly in another reality, so to speak. I'm just saying, as our science progress, as in good light.
But don't forget to clip that and then stop it and start it again, just so we have smaller clips of that, because those are going to get huge. But and I wanted to mention that although with string theory we do have, I'm sure you're aware of, the Large Hadron Collider, and
yes.
they are using that to find, which they did find evidence of the Higgs boson, right? And that was a big piece of the puzzle. That was kind of of string theory. It was kind of like, so it's like the residue of string theory in a way. It's like, because again, we can't see at that level if strings are really there, but according to the theory that it produces in this early stage of the Big Bang, there's these the Higgs field, right? And then that leaves the Higgs boson in these early stages, and so they managed to find that kind of particle, but they also found several others. It's weird, I haven't really heard much about it since then, because that was already probably 5-6 years ago or something.
Did they get shut down from the COVID too? Like it just stopped?
Yeah, I don't know if they tried to shut it down, but this
It's been a while.
it's been several years since they found the Higgs boson, and I haven't seen much said about it. I've looked a little bit, I haven't really researched a bunch, but I'm not sure what they're doing as of now.
Are they playing with rockets, you think?
Well, I mean, Elon's playing with rockets.
Yeah.
I'm saying like that he probably bought them out. It's like, hey, you guys, don't worry about that. I got
Yeah.
the answers right here. Come over here.
And thank God for him. I mean, we got somebody who's kind of pushing us into those realms that we're trying to, that give hope to us, at least to people like me. I've been a space cadet since I was a kid. I always wanted to be an astronaut or something like that. And
little Vinny, to infinity and beyond.
I would just, it's what gives me hope, and it could be false hope. It could be false hope, but it is one of those things that makes me think that humanity has a chance, which is to expand beyond, the limitations of this planet, and that we would actually be able to start at least mining the moon or other bodies, asteroids. I think that's obviously the next step, is being able to fly out to nearby bodies and mine them of those resources and expand our resource to where we're not no longer limited and no longer have to tap into Earth so much, right?
So we're on a mission to suck out the nearest source of water and nutrients.
Yeah, and well, there's unlimited amounts of it, and
Yes.
even in the nearby universe, there's more than the nearby in our galaxy, right? There's so much ice detected on some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn and stuff like that, and even some people are saying that there's possibly underground in Mars.
Yes.
So there's just so much potential out there. There's no reason to think that we're limited in any way, in my opinion.
May I also bring up too?
There was also some studies right now that some scientists are actually using a reverse terraforming method where they're able to get they're trying to find the technology or the resources to reverse the carbon emission fuels that's into the air of our surface that's actually harming our environment, get that back into our liquidated form to still have a recyclable fossil fuel source. Now, it's very, I'm going to say it, I know it's an insane thing, but it's one of the concepts that it could be used as a recyclable source.
Yeah.
Back to you guys.
Well, that's interesting. That might be a whole nother debate or topic of discussion, because I definitely think there's some controversial science behind all of that.
We're on Facebook Live, so we don't want to get banned either.
Oh yeah, of course.
I think it'd be great to talk about it. I don't want to go too far off from where we're at. I mean, it's definitely an interesting discussion there.
We're spiraling out of control.
But I will say that maybe I'll just encapsulate it in a small nugget and just say that I think that there's plenty of rhetoric coming from different scientists who believe different things about that, and I think they each have some very valid data points, and there's not really it's not as the science isn't settled. All right, I'll just put it that way. I think it's a big problem when people make a blanket statement like that, like, oh, the science is settled on this. That has been said so many times in history and been wrong over and over again. So it's like, it kind of aggravates me a little bit when people are like, oh, the science is settled, we have this figured out. It's like, yeah, so did everybody until Galileo came along and he said, no, actually, I think this is how things work, and now that's the model we're under. And who knows, maybe there's a different model, or there's something that needs to be tweaked about his understanding that we haven't really completely understood either. Maybe it has something to do with higher dimensions.
Do you think we'll find it in our lifetime? That we'll find
anything,
or accept the other side, the other facts?
I think it's entirely possible. Anything's possible. We're definitely reaching a I would say kind of a great awakening. It seems like there's a change in consciousness going on that I think humankind is trying to ascend to another level right now. And
Some.
yeah, some are maybe regressing, and some are remaining stagnant.
Or some are very controlled by a oligarchic group of suppressing them and of evolution, so to speak. I'm not going to get farther into it because this is a scientific discussion and a movie discussion too.
You guys brought up the collider, the Higgs boson particle, and what I found with it is, and correct me if I'm wrong in the way that it works, but from what I understand is they are firing a particle at X speed and they are wanting it to crush against another particle. Is this right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes.
It's like an atom smasher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Theoretical speak, exactly. That's where I'm going for, because we know that particles are not. And by what I mean is that a particle is a wave, and a wave is a particle, and both are the same. It has been proven by quantum physics and the double slit experiment.
Right.
So when the collider is being activated, nobody's seeing anything. They are trusting that their machine and their software is doing what it was programmed to do. And the results are being projected on a computer screen. So what the guys in the Higgs boson laboratory and the different ones on Earth, what they're doing is they are putting in the data into a software that was already made by them, and they are watching a screen and they are watching an explosion of the moment that these two particles come into contact, and are receiving information resulting by the equations that were put for the machine to give them.
In other words, they were collecting the data for the fission, which two atoms would break apart through a split.
For a materialistic cult of bumping atoms.
Yes.
Right.
We haven't seen an atom. We can understand it. We can see how it's trying to behave.
We made pictures, made false little
We've
diagrams.
done imagery of how it looks and 3D representations of them, but we have not actually seen an atom.
Well, and
So-
yeah, and like what you mean by we haven't seen it is like our ability to
Like
to accurately depict it has fault,
an
right?
electron microscope does not show you an atom.
Really?
It is impossible. We have not seen it. It is so small and
So what is it showing?
insignificant.
More like a
it's here
shadow
and
of it or
everywhere
something?
at the same time. We just cannot.
Right.
So
That is true. I mean, I know that that's there's actually a law for that. Can't think of it right now, but they actually have a scientific principle for that where it's like, you know, the more that you try to detect something, you know, like an atom or a particle, like if you try to look at its speed, you know, like or where it's going, then it like you basically alter it in a way to where it's no longer doing what it was before, and but yeah, and like also to your point.
So it changes through attention.
Well, it's like you can't measure. It was like I can't remember what it is right now, but it's like you can't measure both things at the same time. Like it's where it's going, where it's moving, and like and it's energy or something like that. I wish I could think of what it is. Right
It
now.
is the result of this double slit experiment.
Yeah.
What
So
is
when you're-
done?
Uncertainty principle. Sorry, that's what it was. The uncertainty principle.
Thank you.
That the knowledge
crazy.
the knowledge of the which path information is already known by the particle before you actually look at the particle. So
Right.
what I mean by that is that when the double slit experiment is carried, is done, you shoot these supposed particles through the slits, and when you are not watching it, you get a completely different result than when you watch it. But when you watch it is when it changes. So the fact that you are interacting with the moment, it gives you what is expected
Right.
for you to see.
Yeah,
It
our
already,
observation
it knows
influences.
that you are going to watch it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When there's no detectors, it acts like the particles act as waves.
So what is the Hadron Collider doing then?
Well, and-
Because they are trying to recreate or materialize something that we still do not have a grasp on. So
Well, and that's something interesting I'd like to know about too. Is like I wonder if they've tried kind of like a double slit experiment in the Large Hadron Collider, where maybe they are not observing particles, but then look at the results afterwards to see what happens. Kind of like how the double slit experiment was discovered, where they you know, where they have detectors, they acted like particles, but when they didn't have detectors, it acted like a wave. So I wonder what would happen if they've tried that. That's an interesting question to look into. And just to solidify the uncertainty principle, I wanted to pull it up and just so y'all know I'm not insane, or I actually kind of knew what I was talking about here. It's in quantum mechanics, the uncertainty principle, also known as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, is any variety of mathematical inequalities asserting a fundamental limit to the accuracy with which the value of certain pairs of physical quantities of a particle, such as position x and momentum p, can be predicted from initial conditions. So again, the position or momentum, like the more you try to figure out one, it like alters your ability to get an accurate depiction of the other. All right, so I just wanted to get that out there.
Sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, there's uncertainty. We have it. It's in the science, right? So it's definitely uncertain. It's not as exact as I think sometimes people think it is.
yeah.
What's that? Oh, we're at 6:30.
Yeah. How long were you?
Are we just rolling with it, baby? We just rolling.
So Facebook.
I'm about to.
So
You about to out?
Yeah.
Okay.
so Facebook is still going right now.
Yeah,
and
yeah. We're
If
still messing with.
So say hello
somebody.
to everybody. What's going on? Plug your Twitter profiles and your.
We'll definitely restream, you know, rebroadcast on YouTube and stuff. Maybe chop it up, but you know, it'll definitely be seen again in other forms. But thanks for joining us, then, Jimmy. You're getting out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
Jimmy's
Thank you,
gonna
Jim.
take off. Thank you
Oh,
so
no,
much for
no.
coming through and
Yes.
contributing to the discussion.
Indeed.
You as well.
Seeing you again.
Good seeing you.
Right.
Bye.
Nice meeting you,
Okay,
Carlos.
Blitz, it has been an honor of
Bye-bye.
this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you for coming. All right.
Yes.
Feel free to take a
Thank
slice
you.
of pie on your way out.
Yes.
All right. Now,
Good.
All right.
Getting into some of the other parts of the discussion. So we've gone through a lot of good things here. There's several points that the movie brings up that I think are fun topics. So for instance, pi, for bringing it full circle. I love the idea that pi, it describes the ratio of the diameter of a circle to its circumference, right? So it's essential to understanding the circle and making any calculations with it. And it's interesting to me how in making those calculations, in trying to understand pi, we are faced with the infinite in a finite space. I find that to be one of the most pleasing and also troubling aspects of math and of geometry. So that's just an interesting thing to kind of ponder upon, is like how we can rectify, or how we can just come to terms with that, how you can actually have infinity inside finite, and so they're almost kind of interchangeable in a way, right?
What I think you can't do though is step out of infinite. I think that we are bound to the containment, and we always go from container to container. We are in the house, we go to the car, we go in the bathroom, in the theater, we are in the earth, and there's no way of leaving.
Yeah, you can't.
We have all the possibilities and all the places, even within. We are meant to be contained.
Yeah.
So,
like even your body is a container. Right?
Yes, yes. So I don't know when or if we're going to take the conversation to places where you wanted to maybe explore. Mm-hmm. But that is where I see a lot of, where I am coming to a lot of changes in the way that I see my reality.
Right.
So I don't know if that's something that you would like to do. But
we could definitely go there.
It's almost like we're touching the partial surface of asymmetrical theory.
And what's that?
What do you mean?
Asymmetrical theory is just only physics theory stating and underlining that you have something that's all proportional and symmetrical that makes sense within the matrices. But then the asymmetrical gives infinite possibilities of the unknowns to test around with, which is relative, not exact, relative to what you're speaking about. We have an infinite source internally through a finite external source based on what you're stating. I'm trying to explain. There's a correlation between this conversation and the asymmetrical.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's all I'm trying to say.
So to start putting a little bit of uncomfortableness into the conversation, I want to touch a subject like geology, for example, and where I find the chinks in the armor that lead me to understand that a practice like geology is not a scientific endeavor. It is a human, virtuous, literate, well-intended practice, but there is no way for us to go back in time to make the observations. The mountains are there, the rivers are there, but we cannot explain or experiment with a mountain to see how the mountain was formed.
Okay.
In order to understand what a mountain is, we need to sit ourselves on the foundations of a Big Bang cosmology. So we need to understand that everything became from nothing, which is a whole argument in itself.
That is hours
of discussion.
That's definitely something I've contemplated a lot, even recently for whatever reason, and I can't really make up my mind about it. It's kind of a funny thing. How do you feel about that?
That it comes down to that question. You either are a human, scientific minded person, and that is your religion and your cult, or you are a spiritual from the Creator, and that is your religion and your cult. To use religion and cult both being negative, but I give them to both so that they sit on both of them and hurt the same way.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
well, there's definitely like scientism. I think I've heard you call it. You know, I agree with you on that.
And pseudoscience more than scientism.
That too.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, yes, pseudoscience can turn into like almost like a religious type thing, and yeah, it's interesting how just about any kind of thinking pattern, you know, can kind of follow into these you know, cult-like symptoms, I guess, or whatever, right?
So we sit on the foundation that something came out of nothing. We go through
That's
time,
then that's
billions of years, and stars begin to form. More billions of years, and from this dust, material starts to come together and gyrate. And after this, thunder and water and bombardment and more millions of years until a bacteria is made, all by random accident. And this bacteria decides to become a fish, and
Well,
the fish
I'm
decides
okay
to
with
have
all
two
that.
legs.
I'm okay with all that except for the very beginning. I guess that's the only problem I have with that story is like, okay, something from nothing. That's
But it's key because
Right.
it's the foundation of the building.
which is kind of also like, you know, also one of the problems, right? You know, because here now we can't get something from nothing, right? We always have to have something come from something else, right? So how does that work? And that's definitely kind of like one of, if not the major problem, I guess, with our Big Bang theory, or with, you know, our theory of reality right now is like, how did they explain that? You know, and that's a problem.
So a geologist sees the Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
and he says, after internalizing and dedicating his life of, let's call it scientific endeavor to find the answers for the longest, because this is very recent, we believed that the Grand Canyon was carved out by the Colorado River through hundreds of thousands of years. There is no way to scientifically prove it, but it is there. So geology is in charge of making the story
Right.
and finding all the answers so that the story fits and still not be scientific. So when Mount St. Helena erupted in the early 80s, it was a volcano with a huge forest around it. And in one single day, valleys and canyons were carved off of the landscape from the lava and the pyroclastic flows. And when you look at the valleys and the canyons carved by this eruption, you can see the strata, the layers of soil
Right.
exposed for us to see.
Yeah.
So if in one day you can have canyons, why wouldn't, or why isn't there the possibility that the Grand Canyon was also created by an enormous flood, an enormous pyroclastic flow of something? And that is why today, if one looks into the story, that is a theory. The
Right.
way that the Grand Canyon was formed is still, it's not a scientific fact anymore.
Okay.
It is open to debate.
Is that something that they're kind of admitting, or is that something?
Yes, this is something that it's already.
They're kind of like, okay, we admit this may not actually be
Yes.
the end-all story.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
that on geology, that we do not know what's underneath.
Right. It's a changing science.
The deepest hole ever perforated into the earth is 12 miles deep. 12 miles out of 4,000, that is the radius of the earth. So in reality, if it's an apple, we haven't even scratched half of the skin of the apple.
Right.
And we're claiming to know all these things that are because the foundations of the Big Bang. So geology has to grab all these things, and they are on shaky grounds, because if nothing can create something, okay, but if that is not provable, a lot of geology, a lot of all these other sciences are not okay.
Right. Oh, I agree. And to your point, I've actually have found some things that kind of changed my understanding of geology too, even that was interesting to me, that I think most people are unaware of, which is that, you know, we were all told, especially when we were kids, you know, like in the 90s and stuff, we're all told that there's a very finite amount of petroleum, of crude oil, and, you know, petro, gas, chemicals, all that stuff, that we were told that there was a very, very finite amount. We could pretty much measure what we believed to be how much there was underneath, you know, the U.S. soil and possibly abroad as well. And, you know, so that's why we need to go like drill in other countries, and we need to buy it from other countries, because, you know, it's a very geopolitical thing that these studies result in. You know, it's not just a study, it actually changes politics, it changes policy, it causes wars, it causes death, and it changes economics. I'll come to find though that like in recent years, and this is mainstream too actually, is that they've come out and said, well actually we now realize, I guess probably with better seismic data, that we've got so much more oil underneath the ground in America. Like we've got, I'm not going to say endless, but a very large supply that could last us a very long time. Just
it's
here.
Definitely not dinosaurs that died.
And that's another thing too, yeah, that like we call it fossil fuel, but that's actually not even accurate.
Nah.
It's mostly dead plant matter, right?
Yes, it's well, it is.
Yeah.
We do not know what it is, where
Right.
it comes from or anything. We
Right.
just know that it's there and it will always be there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that were kind of common knowledge when I was younger that's already been like mainstream wiped off the books, not even legitimately upheld by people, geologists, right, and people who know what they're talking about. But we still call it fossil fuels as if it's dino power, right? Like we're just burning dinosaurs. You know, it's like no, actually, most of it, if you know, a very small percentage of it would be any dino bones being burned, I think.
It's
Right.
funny that you guys mentioned fossil fuels and the political influence aspect of it, because sometimes, you know, the way that and I'm not trying to take a jab at the academic or the education structure that our dear government is doing, but because of the fact that we have not updated our educational sources in terms of, you know, again, what you stated, it's not just dinosaur body, dead cells body that's transforming into oil or dead plant cells. It could be other forms of, you know, fossil fuels, that's other organic life form that we're still drilling, that we don't know the contents of it. That, again, you, Carlos, you have briefly and strongly stated that geology can't, you know, it's just only studying the actual visual substance of it. And, you know, I'm glad that you also put out a pretty good argument point in terms of, well, okay, it could be a huge river, it could be a meteorite, or, you know, it could be thousands and thousands of years of just water and ice just chiseling it slowly and slowly.
Or like you said, it could be a one-day event too, right?
Yeah, where a big thunder or, you know, a huge foreign object just hits it or something. You know, my point in, you know, in terms of, you know, trying to deal with all the inaccuracies in terms of, you know, what sometimes, you know, our political structure would try to, you know, assume what they know, is that, again, you know, this leads back to humanity using science that we know as an absolute fact without even knowing that, okay, things could change. They use that in order to, you know, power and control the influences of other people that would lead to great global mistakes.
But also just to the point of like, we don't know, you know, kind of wrapping up, I guess, what we were saying there perhaps, but just that we don't know what's underneath the ground really. You know, that's the main point, is like they've, scientists and people have been making claims about what's underground and how much is there, and they've been wrong over and over again. And but luckily, and it's actually been to our benefit. You know, it's like we've actually come to find, well, there's way more underground petroleum, and we actually don't even know why there's so much, or what, you know, what it's all made of exactly. And also, same things with like underground water. So that's another thing that's interesting to me, as you pointed out how deep the Earth's crust is and how little we've even excavated. To say that we're running out of fresh water, you know, that's another one of those kind of like scare tactics that I've heard over the last couple of years. I've seen like a video where it's like, we're running out of water. It's like, interesting. A big giant blue Earth full of water is running out of water. I mean, I know they mean desalinated water, right? But there is a way to desalinate. But I mean, again, like think of how much water is underwater. I mean, like under the ocean, underground, under any area of the Earth. And that's fresh water, and we don't even know how much is there. They can't say how much is there.
Maybe I also support your statement too, Vincent, that, you know, our Earth has like 70% water, but look at our bodies, look at our plant and our life form. 60% or 70% of our bodies are made out of water. Water will not immediately go completely disappear, and due to the scientific method and the physics law, matter like water cannot be destroyed or totally be taken away. It only changes, but it will eventually go back to its original source, one way or the other.
Sure. Go ahead and clip that again because you don't want that video getting too long.
Okay, sure.
So, is there anything we want to wrap that up? Because I would like to get on to some other topics before we close it out. It's probably running kind of long now.
No, we can let's move ahead. Let's move ahead.
Yes.
So yeah, just some other things that I just found interesting. Maybe I'll call out a few of these and we can kind of just pop into one of them. But one of the things that I loved about the movie Pi also is what kind of brought us here today. We're talking about all kind of crazy things here, but mainly it's the Pi. The great circle, the infinite and the finite, encompassed in one beautiful, very simple place. That's another thing that's interesting to me is it's like so simple yet complex. It's one of those like dichotomies of life. It's infinite yet finite. It's simple yet complex. It's patterns in chaos, right? Too. So that's kind of interesting to me how it's this chaos. It seems like a chaotic meandering stream of numbers with no pattern apparently, right? And that's kind of what the movie riffs on a little bit too, is just this idea like, well, what if there is a pattern in pi? Could we figure that out? And I guess they haven't found one yet. We have computers that have been calculating the digits of pi up into the trillions now, yet I haven't heard of anybody finding a pattern yet. That's surprising to me. Out of trillions of digits that you can't, that it almost seems like a random pattern. Like it seems like I should actually be able to like just pick a pattern and find it in there at this point,
Yeah.
So that's really surprising. I'd like to look a little bit more into that.
The movie does that a lot. The movie goes from slow, melodic to cut frame, and it keeps going in those two motions. So I think that one of the first scenes of the movie is some Korean ladies doing their slow dance, and the protagonist of the movie is walking behind this barbed fence wire. Everything
really
is placed in those ways, like you were saying. The activity, the confusion, at the same time with the wise, slow time.
Yeah.
The movie does that a lot.
The movie also plays into that if you really look at the psychology of the protagonist, if you notice, there is a reason why it's black and white. When we do math or we are focused on one thing, we see the world black and white. But this protagonist is not seeing it as a whole picture. He has this very semi-bipolar characteristic where he's just shut off from the social world.
Definitely works for that.
Which works with the black and white thing. And I'm glad that you've mentioned also the bars that he's just following in an angular motion as opposed to people performing Tai Chi in a circular go along with a flow. There were other times when there was just close-ups where it was close-up shots of this protagonist just trying to stay focused, but the director was trying to go in a narrative that I'm trying to stay focused and I'm under a lot of pressure. Whereas if it was outside, it was now social, but he fails so miserably to accept help or to communicate with people. If you notice, he feels so secure in his box, in his bubble, that it's almost ironic that the pie is a circle as a whole, but he goes as an angular mathematical behavior.
Yeah, an approximation to the infinite, right?
Yes.
Just like squaring the circle, and you keep squaring it, and keep stacking and dividing, and eventually you get closer to a closer approximation of this irrational number, right? So that's definitely interesting. And
the circle being the, like you were saying, the everything, the all, the universe, totality, and the square being the physical, the directional, the material, the rational. So when you are squaring the circle, you are trying to understand the circle by your means that are bound to your physicality, and actually never achieving find it or
never
to get there.
But we try. It doesn't mean it's futile, right? Because with getting closer approximations, we get it's progress still, right? And
Yes.
we should always be pushing for progress.
Yes.
All right, moving on to a few more other things. So there was also, I like how they link it to the stock market. You know, that was an interesting twist. You know, so it's kind of like makes me think too, like, what if the stock market is kind of fixed, you know, or like the game is rigged, and we saw something like that very recently with the whole GameStop thing. You know, how when people were short selling GameStop. And then a bunch of people on Reddit decided, all right, well, let's all just pour some money into GameStop, and let's get these short sellers to, you know, pay us. You know, and they really screwed these guys over, and it was great because it, like, you know, even Elon Musk had pointed out how short selling is like a really terrible way to make money. You're basically betting on somebody to lose, and then you're pulling money out to tank them so you can make money off of their loss. And so I thought that was an awesome way that the power of the people was actually overriding these crooks on Wall Street. But after like a day or so of that going on, then we saw the tech giants crack down back onto the people again and say, no, you can't do that. And Robinhood ended all sales for the rest of the day on GameStop, and they pretty much squashed the movement. And I thought that was pretty messed up, man. I think that kind of proved it's like, wow, we don't even have a free market there. It's a rigged market. You know, if things don't go their way, it's rigged. They will cut you off.
There's a famous quote by a very important banker in the history of the world, J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
Millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do. So what this means is that the people that really know how people interact, not only as society, but as fluidic money, fiat, and the way that we can interact with each other in this way, these people know about numbers and about movements of the universe and can interpret them and are so much closer to pi than the rest of the everyday person.
Yeah.
So when these people are trying to play their game, these guys are so high and so far away from the understanding of the little person trying to play that he's always going to be a victim.
Yeah.
There's no way. The only way could be to detach yourself from it.
Right.
Because unfortunately, it's all about intention.
Yeah.
And the intention of the people that have the hands on the construct that we are living in right now are not the best for everyone. Are not the best for you, for me, or for you.
Right.
So it's acknowledging it, trying to learn what the language is, and slowly start removing yourself from it.
Yeah.
Because it's about you, your heart,
So
and what you can affect.
So you think removing yourself from it is the answer, and like to not actually try to play their game? Is that what you're saying, or what?
The constant exercise of getting there, because at the end there's gonna have to be a way for us to share our reality, and not everyone is gonna be a guru or a Buddha or a monk.
Right.
So there's gonna have to be ways to work with it, but as a personal quest, there should be the practice to understand pi, understand the universe, understand the language of the people that are trying to hide all these lessons.
Right.
And that's why they put it in a difficult movie like Pi.
Yeah.
Black and white movie, no thank you. Crazy guy with numbers, no thank you. When in reality, there's hours to talk about us and how we can become better.
Yeah, definitely. So just are you saying though, should we play the game though? Should we be trying to beat the master at his, for say the stock market or whatever? Should we even attempt, or are we wasting our time?
In my personal case, I can only speak from where I am.
Yeah.
I am not in any type of market. I don't do any type of investments. I am starting to understand that there is a movement towards digitizing the way that we do commerce within ourselves.
Right, like Bitcoin
and
and stuff.
we should actively be starting to learn how to be in that realm, because we may need it in order to keep going to where we're going.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I feel like there's one side of me that wants to get into, like Bitcoin or those kind of currencies. But then there's also another side of me who's actually more strongly feels like, well, I know at least like if I invest in like silver, I would have something physical. I can actually own a block of silver that's useful, that will always retain value. Whereas like I don't know what's going to happen with these, with these Litecoin and
X
all that
amount
stuff.
of your wealth should be in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, and learn that. Another part of your wealth and goods should be in gold and silver.
Right.
A little bit other should be in cash.
Right.
And then distribute.
Right.
And learn how to play
everything in
with
moderation, like my grandma told me. She was always right about that. Okay, so that's cool. Let's also talk real quick. There was one part of the movie that I thought was interesting where it's like, he's crunching the numbers of pi, and then supposedly what happens is the computer becomes aware, right? And that was something interesting there, and then it fries the motherboard or something. So, that's just something to quickly touch on, but it's just, it seems like we are, of course, people have been talking about the singularity, right? So what happens when AI gets to that point? And I was just wondering, like, what do you think? Is Mark Zuckerberg an AI or what?
No.
No, okay.
He's an algorithmist, for sure.
Okay.
And when he takes and when he uses the chances of probability to use in his advantage, much like what the narrator was trying to stress on the theme of probability in terms of the subplot with the stock market, that the protagonist is trying to find the algorithm in. Now, the stock market in reality, it goes as, like anything could happen. But what he was trying to do was that he was trying to find a system within that area. Once his supposed allies in the beginning took an interest in his talent, and they were trying to see that, okay, he's looking for the algorithmic, patterns within pi to find, how does the stock market work in a pattern for people to win. They decided to go ahead and, set him up for failure so they could frame him and later take whatever numerical calculations they can for themselves and set him up to the government. Now, in terms of business, what the director is trying to portray, I mean, one thing is flat out cold in the end. Business is a cold, mean, cutthroat business, and like what that evil woman who's the leader of the head honcho said, I don't care about you, you're nothing. Who gives a damn about you? Give us those codes. It's all.
I care about what's inside.
I care about what's inside, the value of it.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part about business, honestly. It was a dark humor if you think about it. But let's go back into the stock market thing and so forth. The stock market, again, we have to learn how to be very responsible when we go ahead and do this. But obviously the director was trying to say was that be careful, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But in reality, in the stock market, it's like, again, don't put your eggs in all in one basket. But, there is no algorithm whatsoever in the pattern of the stock market. It's just going to go spontaneous. Yeah. All it is just going to go as this random sine wave according to the business algebraic charts to only record the history. And the thing is that what this film was trying to teach us in the business and stock market part is you cannot forecast or predetermine business, stock of flows of each different types of services or money or type of monetizing, because it's always going to go as a random. People's needs.
But in the movie, though, he did, remember? That was kind of the cool thing.
Okay, he only solved part of it. That's why the people were trying to gun him.
Right, because he was able to pick stocks that were like exact numbers.
They don't allow that to happen.
They won't allow that to happen. But
he
only got part of it. That's why they got mad. They want him to have the whole thing. His value was to make sense of things. They thought he was going to go and use that algorithm to get rich or get into the money. Here's the proof why he didn't want to be rich. When the woman who was like a stockbroker trying to harass him, like, look, I could give you lots of money. I don't want your money. I could give you diamonds. I could give you gold bars. Would you like it? No, of course not. Here's something valuable. Just wait here. She gives him a chip in which she already
knows that he is looking for answers in the computer science. So
The black box.
yeah, the black box. There you go, or the black supercomputer chip.
That was
Now,
definitely an interesting, kind of symbol that you pointed out, Carlos, that I didn't really think about much. The many times I've seen that movie is the black box. Like, how did that come to you? Was it just
It's the cube of Saturn,
yeah,
the black box.
what's the cube of Saturn?
Saturn being the owner of this realm, the owner of time. There's so much to it. I really don't know too much about it, but
Okay.
like we saw in the movie.
So it's kind of a symbolic, kind of ancient, kind of like what, Greek or something, symbology or something.
Well, it's used by, like we saw in the movie, it's used by Judaism as one of their. I don't know the name of the piece, but it's like a rosary.
Right.
So you have the black box on your forehead.
Yeah. I haven't actually
It's
really never.
also
known
used by Muslims when they do their Hajj retreat.
to Mecca.
They go to Mecca
Right.
and they go around the black cube.
And I wonder if that's what the little cube represents. It's just kind of like a smaller, like medallion version of that giant, big cube that
It's definitely something in there. So it's called the Kab,
Yeah.
and there's Kabbalah.
Right.
So all those roots, all those connections are there. That all these religions stem from that same source.
Yeah.
They
It's
are
crazy,
all sons and daughters of Abraham.
Right. The
So
Abrahamic
even
religions.
though they are all so different
Yeah, so
and
you
we
got
fight so much
Jews,
about it,
Yeah, Jews, Christians, and Muslims all coming from the Abrahamic religion. They all come from the same starting point, right? Interesting. Yeah, it's so weird. So weird that that things have gotten so, I guess, broken up over the years, and yet, it all comes back to that same central point. And what's really weird about that thing to me is, I mean, they're circling around at Mecca. That thing actually came from the sky, like it's a giant meteorite rock that they just like chiseled into a cube. Yeah. Right.
I'm not sure about that.
I'm
I
pretty
think
sure
I think it's inside,
Oh, is it?
and this is a covering
Okay.
of the.
It's a floating rock inside. They just put a black onyx mosaic on
Oh, okay.
top, so that way people won't get so frenetic
Right.
or something when they look into it.
Still
You've
pretty
heard that
strange,
it's a floating rock.
That's what they have told.
Wow.
I'm not
I
a primary
haven't heard
source.
that one yet.
I'm not a primary source. Don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
If you must debunk it. You must find the truth.
I kind of want to
Please
look
go
into
to
more.
the
Yeah.
The idea that they're all like praising a rock that flew from outer space, that's wild to me, you know. It's interesting, it's cool. It's like if you're gonna worship and praise around something, I guess, you know, why not a giant meteorite? That's cool. I could dig it.
Well, to be fair and to be safe for the sensitive viewers that may find this in denial or shock or whatsoever, I will say that, you know, for our pro-God believers, let's say, you know, most meteorites do not float once they have an impact. Because of this miracle phenomenon, that's why they have it covered, because so many skeptics or so many people.
Oh, so
that
it's
are
really
just
supposed to
gonna
be
get
floating.
very hysterical.
Wow.
They're gonna, you know, start this argument whatsoever. So that's part of the reason why the Muslim crowd, they had to put this black onyx box over.
Huh.
So it's
I-
up to you to
yeah.
decide whether it's fact or fiction.
Right,
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely.
Interesting. Oh man, that'd be really cool. I'd love to, man. I think they need to take the box off, man. I want to see a floating meteorite, you know?
And determine to see if God really exists or not.
Yeah.
I leave it to the person. I mean, there are so many people that you'll be surprised that they'll see, but then they won't believe it. And then there are people who will see, and then they will believe it. Human nature is very complex, and that's what I found in the Pi movie. It's just so complex to the point that nobody wins, nobody agrees to the same thing. Their agenda is going to turn them into violent human species. Not only just the protagonist, but also the people that he felt that he confided in, alienated him, antagonized him. They had their own agenda whatsoever, and the friend that he had, that he was most close to, even though he felt antagonized, he realized he lost his ally towards the end when he passed away and gave up hope.
Oh yeah, his mentor, yeah. That's most of what the movie had me thinking of that I thought would be fun to talk about, other than, You know, there's just, they bring up the ideas of spirals and fractals. That's always interesting. I'm also kind of just, you know, curious. You know, there's the idea of, you know, that pi as a circle can be related to everything in reality because of everything, as you see, like behind Carlos here, that looks like a circle, even though in my 3D realm, I'm actually here and it's a sphere to me. So it looks like a circle, and you can do a lot of math and measurement and calculations and predictions using the circle. So pi is like, it's utilized in so many things. And just to give a few examples, you know, pi is used in finding exoplanets by the blocking of light, the light curve that creates. It's dependent on how big the star is, and they have to use you know, 4 pi r squared to figure that out. And so there's so many things that we use in astrophysics, and anything with circles, and circles tend to just be about everywhere, right? Even from the macro to the micro. So pi and circles and spheres are just about everywhere. That's what I find is interesting, and my art reflects that a lot, because I use a lot of polyhedra and sacred geometry and platonic solids. Those are all shapes that fit within a circle or sphere. They're circles because I'm doing them in 2 dimensions, but it's a 2-dimensional plane representing a 3-dimensional object. And in 3D, it's actually a sphere. And each point on each of these objects, I'll even kind of just point over to a few, like this right here, down here, this ox, or Cape Buffalo rather, that shape right there, you know, that fits perfectly within a sphere or circle. Same with like this this tetrahedra up here, you know, each one of those 4 points stands on a circle, you know, points and touches the circle. So every one of these geometries that I put in my art are spherical in nature. That's kind of like, it's just interesting to me. And so pi is a part of all that, you know, and you can really see how it is a part of everything when you realize that everything is part of the circle and the sphere, at least in my understanding of reality and physics. And maybe we can just kind of close with a little talk about that. Like, I don't know, do you have anything you want to say about that, or that you feel? Because I know we think probably a little differently on some of that.
Yeah. I do have a lot of questions still about astrophysics, astronomy, and what our astronomers and astrophysicists are claiming to be as reality, because they are telling us to trust them without them giving us the physicality of what their said experiments are meant to represent. So we have to give all our trust, for example, to outer space endeavors and companies. Personally, I don't think that we can leave the Earth. I see a lot of problems with, for example, the trip to the moon. I think that they are not telling us a lot of what it is to go to the moon in the way that it was shown to us. I think that not only was all that a theatrical experience, but still what we see today are theatrical experiences. So all these Elon Musk rockets, cars to outer space, landings on Mars, there are truths to them, but the way that we are imagining these things are happening are being manipulated by the people that know how this travel really takes place. Mm-hmm. So we will never know what a star is. We know that a star is a light in the sky. And it has been written that it's there for signs and seasons and time and consciousness. But we cannot say anything more than that. Asserting that it's at a certain distance, made of certain chemical processes and minerals and gases, or all those claims that cannot be scientifically proven, are hindering our exploration.
So how would we explore in another way? Like, what do you think? How if it's hindering us, where would we go?
So, I think that, for example, in the time, and I'm not saying that Christopher Columbus and his story is factual. I think that the history of Christopher Columbus, the discovery of this new world, is a fictional but grandiose narrative of how civilization expanded to the Western world.
So you think it's kind of like a Kris Kringle turns into Santa Claus kind of thing or something, right? Or Saint Nick rather.
I don't understand what you're saying there, but the story of going to the moon is very similar to a Santa Claus story. Yes. But going back to Christopher Columbus, at the time when he lived, and this was taught to me in high school, maybe it was not taught to everybody. The way that I was taught it is that he was the one who said there is more land. Before Christopher Columbus, now we know about Eratosthenes.
They told me different, actually. That what I learned was that he was trying to find a route to India, for trade, and then so that's why he called them Indians when he found the Native Americans, because he thought he was going to India, and he's like, oh, brown-skinned people, yeah.
There has to be a shape to the earth that is going to take me back to where I came from,
right,
and around to the Indians other way.
So his belief was that, well, the earth is round, so if I just travel out this way, it's going to bring me around, and I'll finally come back around the other side.
But he was not, so that's what we were taught,
right.
But we were never taught about Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes is 2,000 years before him, and he was the one who, or that's what is known now, not what we were taught in high school. That is the guy who saw the shape of the earth. So at the time of Christopher Columbus, when I was receiving my history, the world was incarcerated to a delimitation of land, and if you went away, you were either fall off or you would be eaten by dragons. So you do not go and explore, because if you do those things, you will die.
And then Eratosthenes said no to that, or he agreed with that?
Eratosthenes 2,000 years before suggested that the earth has a circumference.
Now, Eratosthenes was a map maker as well, or one of the people who sailed a lot, that developed more facts that need to prove that the earth was round?
He did light and angle experiments.
Okay.
He did not travel or much more than Alexandria to Sion. That's where the cities where he was making his calculations, but he never traveled. He just, with light and angles of how the sun creates shadows, was able to create a very close approximation to what the circumference of the earth is today according to mainstream.
Yes.
But where I'm going with that is that exploration is open still to new discoveries within the earth.
Right.
Travel outside of the earth, to me right now, it has a lot of problems because of the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Everything goes from high energy heat to a low energy colder. There needs to be a balance of energies.
Right.
On the earth, at level ground, we have pressure. And the higher we go, there's different pressures and different particles and substances that are mixing and are creating all these supposed layers, but there's no really layers. There's just different gradients that go from somewhere to another.
Sure.
And then there is a imaginary line where the outer space begins. Outer space is a gigantic force of counter pressure. I don't want to say suctioning because a vacuum does not suction, but a vacuum is craving accelerating particles and atmosphere and breathable or oxygen. So if you have oxygen and no barrier, the outer space is going to suck it all out. There needs to be a containment to the Earth.
Well, that's kind of what I guess the, gravity is and electromagnetism and all those forces that such a large, massive object, right? That's kind of the idea, is that that's what's kind of holding everything in, right?
If it's Newtonian gravity, yes. But Newtonian gravity has chinks in the armor, and that's why Einstein came and said it's not things gravitating to the center, but it's the fabric of everything,
space-time
bending to a node, right?
And that actually does relate to pi too, because like the general relativity space-time warp, things that are actually warping space-time are in a spherical form. So there again is pi showing up in this idea that whatever body, be it a star or a planet or even a human, anything that's warping space-time, you're doing it actually. The warp is in accordance to, it's in a spherical form, from what I understand. But
So
at least in his equations, it is.
These travels to these other places may as well be travels to other places that we do not know of on the Earth.
Yeah.
We have to trust these agencies with the shape of the place that we live in. All the images that we receive, that are images accepted by the people that are giving us these images, are, if you take a compass and you trace a circle, it's a perfect circle. But then at the same time, they tell us that it's an oblate spheroid. I've never seen a picture of the Earth or an image of the Earth as an oblate spheroid. It's always a perfect round circle. So where is the picture of the Earth? Where is the actual photograph? We still don't have it. And we are trusting these agencies that do a lot of fanfare and cinematographic artistry, and there may be a lot of questions to be asked about that. Because maybe, just like pi, the shape of the Earth is unknowable. It is not a scientific prowess. It is not a cause and effect question. You cannot.
Does this lead into like simulation theory for you?
It might as well could be that. It could be a electromagnetic toroidal manifestation that we as physical beings understand as what we are, but it could be anything within the realm of the toroidal forces and the electromagnetic frequency of everything.
That's interesting.
But not a shape, not a, this is the stamp of that is the shape.
Well, toroid is a shape though.
Yes,
Torus.
toroid is a shape.
So it has some kind of geometry, right?
Yes.
Well, it's an organic, multiple ring that goes like in 3 different rotations. Is that the shape that you're referring to?
Yeah, like he's talking about like the torus. I don't know how you would describe it.
It's
kind of like
donut.
Like
a
a
three-way
donut.
Yeah, it's like a donut. Right.
Yeah.
Like donut makers are alchemists
Yes.
of flavor and shape.
Yeah, I didn't want to deviate away from our conversation.
So, but yeah, I think that the shape is still open. The real shape, I think that there is a lot of misrepresentations and a lot of imagery to whatever the goals are. And traveling, I don't think it's out and far, but within where we are to those places.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, obviously, I don't agree with that, but I think it's an interesting point of view, and there's definitely, you know, validity in probing and asking these kind of questions and trying to prove it and figure it out as best as we can. And I think, I mean, that'd be, again, it'd be a little depressing to me if I found out that we can't actually visit outer space and other heavenly bodies, because that's all I want for humanity. I want us to be able to move on. But I do think that it's interesting you brought up the torus and the toroidal shape that you say maybe could possibly be, I don't know if you were describing Earth, but I've heard a very interesting theory by Nassim Haramein. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he had a really good idea about the shape of the universe, and he said that what if it's a torus, you know? And it actually, it's the best explanation of the geometry of the universe that I think I've ever heard, because for instance, like the idea that they were saying, well, you know, when we look at the stars, we can see through the blue shift or the red shift if they're moving towards us, and what we found out is that I guess all of them or most of them are shifted to where they're actually moving further away. So that means the universe is, like, according to their model, still expanding, where they feel like, I guess with their calculations, it should be slowing down or whatever. So ultimately they have problems with, like, why the universe is doing kind of what it's doing when we look at these observations, and the idea that it's actually a torus answers a lot of those questions, because, and also it makes sense to me in a kind of cyclic universe model too, where instead of a cold death where everything just dies and, you know, spaces out into entropy, and then and everything just turns cold, as you know, as you were mentioning earlier. Instead of that, what if everything is actually moving through the torus,
contained?
Yeah, and this like nice, like infinite, you know, sphere in a way, actually too, to where we're actually, maybe we're just at a point where things are going to look like they're slowing down, and then eventually though, then they're going to speed up again as they come up through that torus, and then they spit out another big bang perhaps, and then come out here and they're moving fast and they slow down, and then right when you think everything's going to start, either just completely stop or maybe go back, it actually just kind of reverses and comes back through, and you kind of have this nice torus infinite loop going there.
And that is why the electric universe is gaining so much traction today in the secluded scientific circles.
Yeah.
Because we are seeing that the gravitational model of the creation of the universe has a lot of problems.
Right.
And all the electromagnetic forces and behaviors of it, we can reproduce in a laboratory. We can explain them, we can see them, and we can test them.
Right.
So,
and it does seem like, yeah, gravity probably has something to do with electromagnetism, right? It's like it might just be a byproduct of it.
If you ask Neil deGrasse Tyson what gravity is, he will not know how to give you a conclusive definition of what it is. He will tell you we can play with it, we can predict, we can do, but to know what it is, we don't know. In electromagnetics, there is a knowable toroidal field.
Right.
In a magnet, you have the poles and you have the behavior of the magnetic field and how it behaves.
Right.
In you have polarity, you have the up and the down.
Yeah.
So if the Earth is a negative charge, anything that is positive in charge like us will be wanting to be somewhere.
Yeah.
There could also be density. If we are heavier than a medium, we want to be where it stops, where we are not denser than the floor. But that's why we don't float.
I'm gonna have to look at that some more. That kind of blew my mind a little, but yeah, we're gonna wrap it up, I think. If you had any final thoughts, but I think that's a good kind of place to end, because we're talking about the toroidal shape of the possible geometry of the universe, which once again the torus fits perfectly within a sphere, which can be described as a circle when you break it down into a two-dimensional object, and there's pi in that, right?
Yes, there's pi in that, and that's why we're here today.
Well, thanks for joining me, Carlos.
Awesome,
I think we definitely touched on some awesome topics, and I'd like to have more discussions like this. So, y'all let us know what you thought of this, and you know, maybe some topics we can cover next Pi Day or someday. Hopefully, between now and then, that would be another 365 days. You know, that's more degrees than in a circle, so we don't want to wait that long. All right. See y'all later.
Thank you, everyone.